Welcome to the Foundation in C# course. This is an important first step on your journey to becoming a great C# developer, and I'm excited to be a part of it. My name is Tim Corey, and I'll be your guide throughout this series. This first module is called Getting Started. If you're like me, you're probably eager to get started in the code, but before you do, I want to show you the plan. Now, one of the key principles you'll hear from me over and over is that you need a plan before you act. The better you plan, the easier the journey will be. Learning C# is no different. Just randomly learning different pieces of syntax is not the way to become a great C# developer. Instead, you need to carefully execute a game plan designed for your success. That is what I've set up for you, so let's go over it. First up in the plan is how I intend to teach this course. Objective 1 states that I'm going to teach you the fundamentals of C# in a way that is logical, understandable, and practical. Let's break that down. I'm going to teach you logically. That means I'm going to order things in a way that makes sense. For example, I will not teach you WinForms until after you have an understanding of the basics of object-oriented programming. Why? Well, Windows Forms uses object-oriented programming. So if you don't know it, you can't fix it when it breaks. The second part of this objective is I intend to teach you in a way that is understandable. My goal is not to impress you with how smart I am. My goal is to break down the topics into small enough chunks that it makes total sense. Finally, I intend to teach you practical C#. Aren't you tired of tutorials that teach you something only to have no clue how to do it even a little bit differently? I know I am. My goal is to help you understand the full picture so that you're comfortable using the topics in the real world. Now, my second objective is that I will reuse the basic concepts of C# over and over in order to cement them in your mind. Do you know how you get good at something? You do it over and over again. The same is true for programming. Because this is true, I will not skip over steps or copy large blocks of code. Instead, I'll build everything from the ground up so you can see it again and again, how to do the core concepts of C#. Now, my final objective is to relate everything you learn to the real world, not just scripted scenarios. The point of learning to program in C# is to use that knowledge, right? That is why this course will look like what you see in the real world. We'll use source control, we'll build full applications, and we'll debug errors as they occur. So that's it. Those are my 3 objectives. Now let's look at what I expect the outcomes for you will be. First, you should have a rock-solid foundation in C#. That right there is worth the price of admissions. So few C# developers start their career with a solid foundation in C#. When you don't have a solid foundation, you feel less confident. And that's a scary place to be. This course is going to help you get beyond that feeling to the point where you're feeling confident in your C# ability. Next, by the time you successfully complete this course, you should be equipped to take on at least an entry-level job. You may even be ready for a mid-level C# developer position. That will put you way ahead of the typical college graduate. And finally, you'll end up with a tool Most everyone feels like I did. I wasn't alone. In fact, I was in the majority. Second, it doesn't have to be that hard to learn C#. Now, I tell you this story for two reasons. One, I think it's important that you know who is teaching you. Sure, I could just list all my accomplishments, but that course. It's also the product of years of experience teaching this subject matter. That leads into our next topic, which is my style of teaching. I teach you what you need to know when you need to know it. That means when I introduce you to Visual Studio in the next lesson, I'm not going to cover every feature. Overloading you with facts doesn't help you out. You need the context to know why it's important. When you have the context, learning something becomes much easier. When you see me skipping over something or telling you we'll cover it later, that's the reason why. Second, I don't believe in magic in C#. Now you may laugh at that, but a lot of tutorials teach you magic. Any tutorial that starts you off using Windows Form as a learning platform is teaching magic. You drag a button onto a form, double-click it, type a bit of code, and when you run the application and click the button, a message box pops up. That's great, but how does it work? It's magic. The problem with that is you're stuck when the magic stops working. Double-click that form and then clear out the code when it creates and see what happens. You get an error so bad, it won't even allow you to see the form designer. Now what do you do? I've seen countless individuals delete the whole project and start over. Not my students. By the time I teach Windows Forms, you will know about class instantiation. Then, when I start teaching with the forms, I'll teach you right away about partial classes and events. That way, when a form crashes, you'll know to go to the partial class and delete the invalid event registration entry. See the difference? When magic stops working, you feel helpless. When you're taught how things work and they stop working, you know what to do and can fix it. Fixing a problem yourself, because you're prepared for it, makes you feel more confident. Now, the final part of my teaching style is that I order my lessons to build on each other. I have spent a lot of time working through the best order to teach students this content. I often have students that want to jump the line and learn the cool stuff earlier, but I've seen where that leads. That is the way of frustration. Instead, I teach C# in an order that leaves you confident of every step. Okay, I know you're eager to get started, so let's look at our learning path. I'll be teaching this course as a series of modules. Because each person comes in at a different experience level, I've decided to sell each of these modules separately. That way, if you really think you have a good handle on what the module covers, you can skip it and save yourself the expense. However, just remember that these modules build on each other, so skipping one that you don't really comprehend well enough might cause you to struggle in the next one. Okay, Module 1, which is the one we're in right now, is an introduction to the course, Visual Studio, and a C#. Think of it as the foundation to the foundation course. Module 2 is where we're going to cover the common syntax of C#. Things like variables, if statements, and more. Next, in Module 3, we're going to learn how to debug an application. Because here's the deal. Everybody creates bugs. And instead of getting frustrated and trying to make sure that you've typed things exactly the way that I have, I want to teach you how to debug an application, because at some point, you'll be creating an application on your own and you'll have a bug. And this will just help you be more comfortable with accepting that fact and finding the solution. Module 4 is all about getting started in object-oriented programming. Now that sounds scary. Maybe you're not sure what OOP is. Don't worry. It's not really as hard as it sounds. Now, Module 5 will be our first major project. Learning bits and pieces on their own is good, but learning how to put them all together in a real-world application is so much better. This module is all about planning out and building an application based upon what you've learned so far. This is also where we'll start using source control just like you would in the real world. Now, Module 6 gets us back to object-oriented programming again with some more advanced topics. Now that you have a handle on the basics, these topics will expand your knowledge in preparation for more advanced user interfaces. Speaking of user interfaces, Module 7 is all about common project types in C#. That includes WPF, ASP.NET MVC, Web API, unit tests, and more. We'll cover each project type and how to make use of it. Module 8 is all about getting data from various data sources, including SQL, APIs, and even NoSQL databases. Getting data in and out of your application is critical since that's really the purpose of applications, is to move data around and manipulate it. Module 9 is another major project. In this project, we'll again plan out and build an application, but this time we'll use the knowledge we've gained since our last project to build an even more complex and powerful project. This last module, Module 10, is a really important one. This is another one of those features that sets this course apart from any other course. In this module, we'll cover where you go from here, how to get answers on the internet, how to get good advice for your C# career, how to get your career started, how to get promoted. What good is learning something if you can't use it, right? So that's it for the learning path of this course. Before we go into the next lesson, though, I want to cover a couple things. Throughout this course, you'll see pop-ups. These are really important points that I especially want to highlight. For example, this is one I want to highlight right away. Practice what you learn immediately and frequently. Don't just soak in what I say. Build it on your own. This is critical to your mastering the topics I'm sharing with you. Now next, I want to point out this course is based upon you having Visual Studio installed. Fortunately, that's easy to do. Simply go to visualstudio.com and download the Community Edition. It's free to use with no restrictions on personal use. Now finally, at the end of most lessons, you'll have homework to do. This is not graded work and you won't turn anything in. Instead, this is just suggested work for you to do to practice what you've been learning. I would recommend you do all the homework. If you can't get it to work, go back and watch the lessons again to figure out what you did wrong. For this lesson, the homework is to install Visual Studio. Pretty simple, huh? Just make sure you get the Community Edition. The version I'm going to use is Visual Studio 2017, which is the latest as of the time of this video. If you can get a later version, please do. Things rarely change enough that you can't follow along. So that's it for lesson 1. Get that homework done and then come back to the next lesson.